So I guess I'll get started. Uh, my name is Grant Altenhofen, and I'm a former FLL and FTC judge, as well as an alumni of said programs. So this is Knox. He's our family dog. And yes, he is part human. That's why he's sitting in the front seat with his seatbelt buckled. And so he was pretty much our team mascot. And yeah, he's a great dog. And yeah. So my name is Grant Altenhofen, and I've been a part of FIRST for 10 years. And so this includes 5 years of FLL, or First Lego League, 4 years within FTC on Team 8686 and 14522. And then this previous year, I volunteered as a volunteer for the engineering notebook as well as design. And so I'm an alumni of said teams. And so we actually went on to win Inspire, or was nominated for Inspire in 2017 and 18, as well as winning robot performance in 2017. And that led us to being able to compete at the Festival of Champions in 2017. So as you can see, we're expected to have more than 7,500 participants within FLL, FTC, and junior FLL. And so this can be really crucial in finding volunteers. And so one campaign that Team 8686 started was the Just One campaign. And the idea behind it is that if one person can go out and find just one more volunteer, then we'll be able to have a sustainable resource of volunteers to volunteer for FIRST. And so you can find more volunteer opportunities at hightechheads.org. And one fact that I've always loved to hear is that we actually have more FLL teams within the state of Minnesota than hockey teams. So as you can see, here's a list of the Minnesota teams for the 2019 World Championship. And so some of you may be familiar with the Green Machine. They're based out of Edina. And they were fortunate enough to win Chairman's Award. And then next for FTC, my former team, Coxet Robotics, for winning the Design Award. Rubies, we were actually good friends with them. They won the Connect Award. And then in addition, Green Girl Robotics, they won the Think Award. And then finally for FLL, there's Team Berserk. So you may ask yourself, what is an engineering notebook exactly? And one thing that I like to think of it as pretty much like a history textbook of your team. And so the judges are historians, and they want to look back at everything chronologically that happened within your season. And so this can be specific to your design project as well as outreach events. So it can be really vital to include your engineering process, ongoing record of your project, and different experiments of, your design process, your brainstorming sessions, different observations and small minute details that you have found over the season. And even small mundane tasks can add up and be record for your timeline verification of the actual notebook. So why is it helpful to even write an engineering notebook in the first place? It can be very helpful for not only the judges, but your team. So it's actually a tangible and a reference tool. So that way you can go back and it is written, just in case. Sometimes it can be a little bit annoying to go through digital files. So this way you're able to turn each individual page and write things down. And it can work in your favor for helping the judges come to a consensus during deliberations, and it can convey to the judges on which award you should receive. And if you're striving for a specific award, honing in on those key guidelines. And so, as I mentioned, it's almost, I like to think of it as a history textbook. So it brings back all your stories. That way you can convey it to the judges by the team members. And so ideally all the judges will have a technical background, so they're able to easily identify your engineering design process and how you came about each step, and being able to tell your story verbally. So even minute details can be included, and that way the judges have it straight at their fingertips in terms of being able to find specific things that they'd like to include during their deliberations for a specific award. And so you've only got around a 15-minute window to present to the judges. So having everything within that 15-minute window can be challenging, if not impossible. So having as much info that you'd like to include within your engineering notebook that you didn't get to fit within your presentation can be very crucial in terms of, again, showing the judges why you deserve a specific award. And this can be a great reference tool for the judges when no one is present at the pit. They're able to walk within your pit and see everything visually with the notebook sitting in your pit. So again, not only is it a great learning tool for the students, but it can be very crucial for the judges and trying to learn everything that they can about your team. So for example, why would it even be helpful for the judges? It's able to convey your design challenge and how you overcame said steps. So if you need to go back a step to say like brainstorming, how you did so, and including your failures, and so how you came about said failures and different solutions that you had for them. And so this can be great in terms of backtracking within your engineering design process if needed.
Grant, we have a question.
Mhm.
How do you keep your lab notebooks? Like, are they in an online or virtual format? Or are they like actual paper notebooks that the teams have around?
So before we have the actual notebook printed for competition, we keep everything digitally within our Google Drive. And I'd recommend like Google Drive, but I'm biased towards it. But you can use like Dropbox, or sometimes you can find special plans for even Hightail or other file hosting services. And there's a different process that you can use if you'd like to. Some teams like to have everything printed out as they go, and so they add pages to the notebook as they go. But our team specifically, we liked to have everything digitally at first and then printed. But there's pros and cons to how you store the notebook.
Is there just one person that manages the notebook, or does the whole team kind of collaborate on that?
Being within a small team of only 4, and then previously 5 team members, everyone dabbled within the engineering notebook, but having one person designated to the engineering notebook can be crucial in staying organized. So next is the autonomous award, and here are the guidelines. And so again, having someone designated to the engineering notebook, it can be very crucial to have someone or a spokesperson designated for the autonomous award and how they can speak to said guidelines. And so like different factors that the teams considered they could interfere with different robots within the autonomous period, and how the robot understands its surroundings and navigates within the field. And this also includes if the robot is having trouble navigating the field, if it's, say, for example, if it ran into a field object or another Alliance robot, and how the robot may counteract that or have a failsafe. And so what to include for the autonomous award within your engineering notebook is not limited to code. And so this can be great to include pseudocode as well. And one thing that we found really helpful was diagrams to convey what the pseudocode was. So that way it was a lot easier for the judges to visualize what the robot is doing within the written code. And then you can include strategies too within your diagrams. And so this can be great for showing different design or strategies or different paths that you chose. Next is the creativity award. And here are the guidelines. And having someone designated to speak on their behalf of the creativity award can be really great in terms of just having everything organized and making sure that you have one person designated to each award that they can speak to. And so this includes the actual design or your design process, how you assembled or manufactured the robot, and the actual deployment of said robot. And this also includes failure modes like machine failures, perhaps possible fail safes in case something were to go wrong, and appropriate responses to the challenge, and even things that were considered or deliberated on and chose not to consider. And how the team even created the device or came about the strategy, and how they discovered it either through brainstorming or just trial and error. And it can be really good to include your engineering process for the creativity award and different design decisions, including engineering analysis tools. And so this can be failure modes, effects, and analysis, or FEA, finite element analysis. And so, you know, in case you have like a crucial part within your robot and you want to be able to test the loads and strengths and how it could perhaps fail, and including screenshots of the finite element analysis can be great in showing the judges how you came about including finite element analysis within your design decision. And so, like, say, for example, if you have a part that you find to be too weak within your finite element analysis, you're able to reinforce it and perhaps go back a step within your engineering design process and reevaluate. And you can also include failures. So how you learned from your failure and lessons learned throughout. And again, including action items can be great in terms of remaining focused. And so in case like one team member isn't there, you're able to follow different action items and still get things done if certain team members aren't present.
Are you able to go back and read a previous year's lab notebook?
I don't see why not. It can be great in terms of finding errors or mistakes that you made within a previous year and how you can improve upon it. Next is the Excellence in Engineering Award. And as you can see here, the guidelines. So this includes your entire machine design and detailed process and each step, and whether it's even worthy of its recognition. And so again, including your engineering design process and each step for like brainstorming, design decisions. And what can be really useful is including product drawings and CAD screenshots, and even including product drawings for each subassembly. So conveying how each subassembly is sized and how it fits together within the main robot, and even creating a product drawing of the entire robot just to show its sheer size and how it fits within your design parameters. Next is the Industrial Design Award. And so this, you really want to focus on how your robot is reliable and maintainability. So you want to be able to convey to the judges on if your robot is capable of withstanding rigorous tests. And, you know, like say, for example, an opponent that is very heavy on defense, you want to be able to make sure that your robot can maintain reliability if it gets jostled and beaten around sometimes. And so, as previously mentioned, it can be great to include your engineering analysis tools, CAD screenshots, and product drawings. And it can be great to include your engineering process and perhaps how you backtracked or backpedaled within the process on if you found something unreliable and wanted to improve upon its reliability. Next is the Innovation and Control Award. And so one thing that we found really helpful was fail safes and failure modes, effects, and analysis. So just detailing exactly what could go wrong and how it's solved or not solved, or different fail safes for the robot to execute if something were to go wrong. And having a detailed plan for the machine in mind. And again, redundancy can be really crucial in terms of making sure that you have your challenge completed at the end of the game. Next is the Engineering Inspiration Award. And so this can include a detailed business plan, and this can help staying organized throughout the season and keeping a business plan, just like even a real company. And next is making crucial decisions or dividing workload between different team members or sub teams. And this can also help keeping students, mentors, and even sponsors actively engaged within your season. And how you go about even recruiting or outreach events, and encouraging new team members to join, perhaps next year or mid-season. And so not only that, but how they celebrate success or even sometimes failures. And so documenting lessons that were learned or maybe not learned. And so this can be great in terms of acquiring different assets to effectively deal with advisory. So here's the Chairman's Award or Founder's Award. And so all of this, even your team number and team name, can be documented within the engineering notebook. And a great resource can be found on FIRST's website, firstinspires.org/resource library. And so FIRST lays out everything very organized. And so, yeah. So how to execute as a team. So making sure that you have perhaps a team captain for each sub team or a leader. And so this can be really crucial in terms of staying organized throughout the season. And what was cool having a small team is that you could also rotate if, say, for example, one team member wanted to switch something up and no longer wanted to be a part of the build team. They're able to switch sub team, like within recognition at least. And having a designated coach or student to be the champion of all documentation leads. So perhaps a student designated with a laptop and for the engineering notebook itself. And even preseason, it can be great to come up with your organization template and format. Even choosing a specific font can be great and add different small, minute details that create your team and your team's notebook. And so that leads on to staying organized with file management. So like I mentioned, we used Google Drive and we found a lot of success with that. With fast servers, we're able to download and upload relatively easily. And we even came up with our own file hierarchy system so that we were able to stay organized, including dates. So if we need to go back, or if we need to go back even an entire year, we're able to find a specific year, date, and month. And
it looks like Matea has a question.
Yes.
Yeah, it was related to like the structure of your team. Does it change, or once you guys have it like set up, does it stay pretty rigid?
We try to remain fairly rigid as a team just to stay focused. But being within a small team, pretty much everyone had to dabble in everything. And so it was kind of a blessing and a curse because we were able to learn a lot more as a small team, but our workloads were much higher. So next I'll open it up to Q&As, and you can also ask me about notebook samples. I've included our actual engineering notebook as well as our team notebook. And so like, for example, here's our notebook for 14522. This is the year that we won the design award. And so one thing that we found really crucial was including and documenting formulas very well. So like this, for example, is finding the center to center distance for our chain links. And so this was really crucial to conveying to the judges on why we deserve the design award.
I was thinking about something you said earlier, Grant, about keeping even the designs or elements you decided not to go with in your notebook. What's the benefit of doing that?
Well, you can show how you learned from said design failures and how you improved upon the next design. So if you had something really crucial that went wrong with one design, you're able to improve upon it or completely ditch it if you're not able to execute it properly or just couldn't find any luck with the design itself. And like for one example, in our 2018 World Engineering Notebook, we actually ended up making an entirely new robot mid-season. And so we included each subsystem. And so as you can see, here's like our mechanic drivetrain. And so, and being able to document our engineering process along the way. And like here, for example, was our first design for stacking the glyphs within relic recovery. And we found a fairly elegant, or what we thought was elegant, design with a Scotch yoke in terms of being able to stack a cube on top of the other fairly effectively. But we found that this design was pretty clumsy and overweight. And so we ended up moving to more of a dump truck design, as you can see with our glyph mechanism. And that way we're able to effectively stack two cubes on top of each other. Any other specific questions about our engineering notebook?
Was this built in InDesign?
Yes, it was. So one thing that we found really helpful using InDesign was we were able to create our own format. So as you can see, we have different color gradients at the bottom. So we chose our team colors being orange and green, and we were even able to color key code each design process. So as you can see, each tile represents a different process within our engineering design process. So as you can see, green is subsystem concept design, and then orange, for example, is component selection and design.
These are really way more involved than I would have expected. Like they are very detailed, as you have said before.
Yep. And again, as you can see, we made sure to include different formulas or math within each engineering notebook or notebook entry in terms of being able to convey to the judges how we came up with said solution or problem. And less can be more sometimes, but we really enjoyed including as much as we could with CAD screenshots and product drawings.
How often did you like refer to this in the middle of your design process?
I'd say quite often, but we'd ideally go to our engineering design process and our flowchart and making sure we're following that diligently and using the notebook as more of a first aid in case we need to go back and look at something specific or like a specific step that we missed or that could be reevaluated. But for the most part, we actually didn't really use the notebook as a reference as much as we probably should have.
Did you establish it like early in your team formation that this was going to be a big part of your robot design process?
Yeah, for sure. We start our preseason quite early at the beginning of summer, and we make sure everything's laid out, and that's also a good time for us to include outreach entries. And in our downtime doing outreach, we'll focus on the notebook and how we can prepare for the season. So as you can see, everything was custom CNC made. So we had to make actual product drawings for said parts. And so we had to send it into the machine shop and have everything made. And this can be really crucial to show to the judges not only how we designed the part, but how it's actually manufactured and made efficiently.
Did you already say how many pages this one was?
So our world-winning notebook was actually 657 pages.
Oh,
But
wow.
I wouldn't let that number deter you though, because like I mentioned previously, less can be more sometimes. And I think we kind of failed to account for quality over quantity. And so what we found really helpful was like dog tagging or putting like a little bookmark within crucial entries that we've found to be very highly detailed. And like, for example, within a specific design process step and how we moved forward onto the next step. And as you can see, here's each individual detailed product drawing. And we made sure to include each sub-assembly as well. And so we found this great to incorporate each sub-assembly in showing how everything integrated into one final robot. And one thing that we found really crucial was our finite element analysis. And so this helped us find failure modes or specific areas where our robot could fail if it were to fail. And so this allowed us to reiterate. So as you can see, like here was our first design for our chassis plate. And we ended up finding that we had some areas where we could cut out some weight and save a lot of room as well as space and time for having a much faster and lighter robot.
Do all teams typically do FEA on their parts?
I'd say previous seasons, like 2019 season, we were seeing a lot more, but back in 2018, there was quite a few teams that weren't doing it.
Given how large the notebook is and the fact that the robot does go through quite a bit of change throughout the season, how do you find the area in the notebook that needs to be updated?
Having, again, good file management, making sure that we're able to go back and look, and having things not only named properly, but tagged properly with like a different color. For example, like green would implement a different design process. And so within our file management app, we're able to tag a specific entry in terms of a different color. So that way, not only do we have the specific like entry that we're trying to find, but more of a sub-step or a footnote on what that entry includes.
So it's not in the form of a completed notebook throughout the season.
No. What we do is towards our competition, we incorporate everything within InDesign and have everything printed out at once. And as I've mentioned, we really relied on different diagrams. This one can be kind of confusing to look at first, but we made sure to show each step. So each number has a corresponding detail on what's happening within said step. And so, because you can include the code within your engineering notebook, but without the judges being able to actually see the code executed, or without having code commented or actually seeing the robot run, it can be quite hard for the judges to determine what the robot is actually doing. So the diagrams can be quite helpful.
What kind of proofing process does it go through before you guys call it competition ready?
So what we have is we have one team member designated to the engineering notebook, and we'll proofread with them. And then after that, once we have everything compiled, we individually proofread each other's and cross-reference and come together if we need or find something that could be approved upon, or like even small details like using spell check within our entire notebook. I mean, granted, we we are humans at the end of the day, so we try not to have typos or small errors, but sometimes they slip through the cracks.
How do you incorporate the latest version of your code into the lab notebook? Do you have an automated way to pull in from your code repository?
No, we would simply just copy and paste, and so we'd make sure that the formatting is proper. So like each individual line of code is properly formatted. And like, for example, the judges being able to read comments within the code. And so one thing that we found quite tedious using InDesign was having to manually put each page within the page number. And so what we ended up doing was our programmers came up with a script for InDesign to auto insert each page. And so this was a huge time saver, because before we had the script, we manually put each page in. And so having different sub teams working together and dividing and conquer can go a long ways, because having code or using code to write the engineering notebook or create the engineering notebook can be quite helpful and be a time saver.
Did you use version control on your notebook document, or have a way to revert back if you mess something up? Or
Yeah, we keep a full backup of our drive, and so that would include file revisions, and that also includes like a file history for our actual CAD products or CAD files in case we needed to backtrack.
very cool. If you are doing like day-to-day like ideation and documenting learnings, when you had a final product, did you pull that into a different section of the notebook, or was it did you have to sort through that every time you wanted to get to the latest?
We'd either sometimes have to sort to find the latest, or again, using Google Drive, or being able to open up a file management app and be able to sort by date if needed, or again, by flag or color. So we can flag each individual file specifically for something, or part of a sub team, or part of a, like, for example, a design process. And one thing that we really liked to include was our brand standards. And so this made sure that we stayed organized in terms of our brand as a team, and pretty much almost like a brand like Nike or Apple in terms of staying consistent throughout the year or season. So that way our team is recognizable to the judges. So whenever they see like, for example, Coxet Robotics, whenever they saw the C, they would recognize us. And we made sure to even create like for example, different wallpapers that we could use within the driver control, or incorporate the logo onto the robot so that once you looked at our robot, you could see our logo and recognize it.
What type of auditing capabilities utilize in terms of changing the code or the notebook or the diagrams?
Sorry, I'm having trouble hearing you. Are you referring to diagrams?
Well, I was asking about auditing, like understanding who made what change when, so that if there was something that changed, you can go back into logs and see who made the changes.
Yeah. So again, I would recommend using Google Drive. Like for example, within Google Docs, you can go within file revision or file version or file history, and you can see who made what edit. And so, like for example, we'd make a Google account for the actual team, and we'd put our team name as the name of the Google account owner, but we'd have our personal Google accounts that we'd log into, and we'd share the files with our personal ones. So that way, when we were working on the engineering notebook, we logged into our personal accounts, and that way we had our personal name tagged if we were to make an edit or change. And one thing that we found really fun to play around with was almost an entirely 3D printed robot. And we have good reason to believe that this was why we won the design award at the World Championship, was having a robot that was almost 85% 3D printed. And so even our chassis was 3D printed, including even our axles. So we made sure to print those out of nylon 12 CF. And so it's nylon based, and then the CF stands for carbon fiber. And that was really crucial because we learned a lot with 3D printed axles and how they behave with mecanum wheels. And we did finite element analysis on our axles, and we found a stress point and how the axles could be printed in a different orientation to improve strength. Because if you think about it, how a 3D printer works, it builds layer by layer, or this printing process is known as FDM. And so originally we had printed our axles upright, so the layer strands were quite short and ended abruptly. But we made sure to rotate the axle so that the layers were printed as long as possible. And so this improved the overall strength, and we didn't have any other axles break.
Is there like a typical page number, like how long each notebook usually is?
I'd say it would vary by each team. Again, less can be more, and the way that First Tech Challenge is laid out nowadays, engineering notebooks are much shorter, and that's where I can't stress this enough, but quality over quantity. And so I think that's why the guidelines for a First Tech Challenge notebook was changed a little bit in terms of making sure that you don't have too much content and focusing on what's important to include. So I think with the new process, page numbers are much shorter. I think it was like around 15 to 20 or sometimes 30. And like, for example, this notebook here came out of the 2019 season, and we had a total page count of 383.
Just looking at the time, and we are at time right now. So thank you, Grant. This has been really informative. One of the people said earlier that they need this in their daily work, that this is part of being an engineer. So it's a great skill to have and learn because it has real world applications. So thank you for this. It's been great. You were very detailed and
Yep, it's been my pleasure. I'm happy to present.